Discover the hidden truths. 5 shocking and transformative aspects of Genghis Khan's reign revealed. Rachel stared blankly at her classroom wall, the scuffed paint and faded posters a stark reminder of her struggle to breathe life into history for her students. The dull buzz of the overhead lights felt heavier than usual, echoing her sense of being trapped in an education system that favored dusty textbooks over inspired thought. She believed history could teach empathy and ambition, but every day felt like a battle against an unforgiving tide of tradition. The weight of her unfulfilled hopes pressed down, and the longing for recognition curled in her gut like a tight knot. Then came the rainy afternoon, the one that changed everything. Sorting through her grandfather's attic, she stumbled upon an ancient manuscript, delicate and worn, detailing Genghis Khan's rule. Its pages fluttered like a whisper, stories of strategic brilliance and unexpected loyalty danced before her eyes. Memories of the textbook's dry depiction of barbarism melted away, replaced by vivid imagery that struck deeper, a leader whose vision reshaped continents, whose empire was built on resilience. With newfound urgency, she began to draw parallels between Khan's empire and the economic hardships faced by her own students, struggling under the weight of broken dreams. The spark ignited a fire within, but soon that flicker of hope was dimmed by the oncoming storm. Doubts loomed large, a constant gnawing in Rachel's mind. Should she step forward with her unconventional presentation? The risk of scrutiny from her colleagues threatened to eclipse the potential for a transformative dialogue. She felt pulled in 2 directions: on the one hand, a passionate educator ready to challenge the rigid norms, on the other, a cautious employee who feared ostracism. What if they dismissed her findings as radical? What if it all backfired? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she delved deeper into her research, Rachel's nebulous fears solidified into a tangible weight. She reached out to Ed, the war veteran with stories steeped in resilience. Their late-night conversations bounced from Khan's military tactics to the fierce loyalty found among soldiers. Ed's humor and wisdom wrapped around Rachel like a comforting blanket, yet each meeting left her feeling more vulnerable. The closer they got to the presentation date, the more pressure mounted. What if her colleagues viewed Ed's tales as irrelevant intrusions? What if they laughed? Then revelation struck. A thread in her own lineage connected her to that chaotic era, a discovery that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The thought of stepping into the limelight, of being seen not just as a teacher but as someone with a powerful story woven into history, sent her heart racing. But would this newfound identity element serve her message? Or would it twist her intentions into something self-serving? With the school bell ringing to mark the end of the day, Rachel stood still, her sweat-soaked palms fidgeting with the manuscript. Facing her colleagues and the community felt like staring into a mirror reflecting both promise and peril. Could she intertwine her family's narrative with Khan's legacy without losing herself? The path seemed unclear, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and dread as she prepared for the confrontation ahead. The following days unfolded slowly for Rachel, each morning feeling like an arduous climb. She would arrive at school early, poring over her notes, molding her thoughts into cohesive arguments, all while trying to combat the self-doubt that surged within her like a tempest. The ancient manuscript now lived on her desk, a constant reminder of the brilliance she aspired to communicate. With her colleagues' voices echoing in her head, she rehearsed her presentation in fragmented whispers. She envisioned their reactions, some nodding in agreement, others folding their arms in skepticism, their brows furrowing at her unconventional angle. The thought sent a jolt of anxiety through her. What if they saw her as a misfit in the echo chamber of conformity? Yet circling beneath the surface of her fears was a potent drive to confront the old pedagogical norms. She began crafting a lesson plan that would intricately weave together Genghis Khan's strategic genius with the stories of resilience she saw reflected in her students' lives. These young people, navigating their own battles against the odds, deserved a narrative that resonated with their struggles and triumphs. She found solace in late-night conversations with Ed. Their discussions evolved beyond the historical, spiraling into a space where her rationalizations and his intense life experiences clashed and merged. Under Ed's guidance, she realized that vulnerability could be a source of strength. Perhaps the anxieties she harbored weren't marks of weakness but rather stepping stones leading toward her growth and authenticity. Empowered, Rachel began to delve deeper into her familial connection to this historical period. It was no longer just a fascinating fact, it became a bridge she could use to engage her students more personally. Unbranching her own identity and history, she sought to reveal how legacies are built not just on grand acts, but on the quiet, often unremarkable moments of resilience. As the presentation date loomed ever closer, Rachel faced a critical moment in her personal journey. She stood before the mirror one afternoon, scanning her reflection. What would her students see, the teacher consumed by doubt, or a woman who had unearthed buried truths? Her heart quickened as she envisioned standing before a room of eager faces. Taking a deep breath, she gradually relinquished her trepidation. Instead, excitement began to stir within her. This wasn't merely about Genghis Khan, after all. It was about connection, about breathing life into history and showing that it mattered deeply in their lives. Each pulse of fear she felt morphed into a powerful urge to convey a tangible message about potential and resilience, one that echoed across centuries. On the day before her presentation, Rachel found herself unexpectedly alone in her classroom, the sunlight streaming through the window in a warm embrace. She opened the manuscript one last time, letting it guide her thoughts. Deep connections were waiting to be forged, histories waiting to be rewritten. Yet, a lingering uncertainty still bubbled beneath the surface, the fear of exposing herself too much. What if, in reaching out, she exposed vulnerabilities that could be misunderstood? As the clock ticked down, Rachel realized she must embrace the unknown. The time had come to face her own fears head-on, to present not just facts, but herself. What if this moment could not only change how her students viewed history but also how they viewed themselves? Was she ready to risk it all for something greater? The pulse of her heart quickened with anticipation, and she stepped closer to her truth. But shadows of doubt persisted. Would they resonate with her story? The morning of the presentation dawned with a crispness that invigorated her, and her palms still felt clammy with unease. As she made her way to the classroom, every step felt weighed with the gravity of the impending decision. Today could vastly alter her trajectory, not just as an educator, but as someone forging her own path. What awaited her behind those classroom doors was not just her colleagues' reactions, but the potential for transformation far beyond her classroom walls. Would she find that hidden strength within herself to guide her students through a narrative that could empower them as Khan had empowered those within his empire? Today would reveal unfolding answers if only she had the courage to seek them. As Rachel stepped into the brightly lit classroom, a disarming mixture of anticipation and trepidation surged through her. She could feel the familiar scent of chalk and polished wood that had, over the years, become a second home. But today, it felt different. Today, she was not just delivering a lesson, she was bearing a part of herself. Her colleagues had already taken their seats, some flipping through their papers, others whispering quietly amongst themselves. The air buzzed with the unvoiced judgments she dreaded. Rachel hesitated at the front of the room, her gaze drifting over the assembly, eyes that could either support or scrutinize, reflect connection or foster division. This moment was not merely an academic exercise, it represented a culmination of her journey through confusion, discovery, and burgeoning confidence. Drawing in a deep breath, Rachel set her notes aside. Her impulse to rein in her message to fit their expectations flared momentarily, battling with a deeper resolve to be authentic. Instead of summarizing Khan's conquests or tactics, she chose to share the story of her own fight against self-doubt. I want to tell you a story not just about Genghis Khan, but about what his legacy teaches us about perseverance and identity, she began, her voice steady yet vulnerable. As she weaved her narrative between his triumphs and her own struggles, she observed the reactions around her. Heads shifted, arms unfolded as skepticism began to melt away, replaced by curious attentiveness. She dug deeper, mindfully drawing parallels between the strategic brilliance of Khan and the resilience she saw in her students. It was as if she could feel their walls starting to crumble, revealing tentative connections forming beneath the surface. Resilience doesn't require power or prestige, it manifests in quieter moments like when we choose to face our fears or unearth the stories within our histories that have shaped who we are, she articulated with increasing fervor. For the first time, Rachel felt the alignment of her purpose and her message flow effortlessly. However, there was a flicker of doubt that lingered, a silent whisper just outside her periphery. What if they judged her unworthy of this narrative? What if they perceived her vulnerability not as strength but as a flaw? She momentarily faltered, grappling internally with the old narrative that had plagued her for too long. But then she noticed the way her students leaned forward, their expressions shifting from ambivalence to engrossed contemplation. Taking that as a cue, she pressed onward. In the final moments of her presentation, Rachel shared the story of her grandmother, a woman who had faced countless adversities yet persevered with a quiet tenacity. Like Genghis Khan, her life was a tapestry of victories and defeats. Our histories, both personal and collective, are stitched together with resilience, she concluded. The room fell silent as Rachel concluded, and it felt as if the air had shifted. Rather than applause or immediate feedback, there was a moment of stillness, like the collective breath of anticipation had filled the space. Then, slowly, one colleague broke the silence, nodding, followed by another who offered insights, revealing the way they had resonated with her narrative. Rachel realized they were engaging with her not just as an educator, but as a human. The acknowledgement of her authenticity ignited a transformation within her. She stepped away from the podium, feeling lighter, her past burdens unshackled, and her voice strengthened through connection. For the first time, others weren't merely hearing her, they were listening, yet, as the discussions flourished, a new tension arose. The deeper questions about identity and resilience started to emerge, revealing flickers of resistance within some questions about historical narratives and the implications of challenging established beliefs. Would she be able to navigate these complexities that came with her newfound confidence? Rachel realized this was just the beginning of another battle, a journey toward confronting not only external skepticism but also her own evolving views. Would she be ready to expand the dialogue beyond the classroom, exposing her understanding and growing alongside her colleagues and students? Confrontation with their entrenched beliefs was on the horizon. As discussions unfolded, Rachel felt an electric pulse of determination surge through her veins. She was standing at the precipice of a new opportunity to redefine not just a single space of education, but perhaps a wider perspective on history and self. Today they had sparked a fire. Would she have the courage to fan the flames? Rachel left the classroom that day with her mind swirling. The discussions had sparked a new realization within her. This was not just about teaching history, it was about redefining it and her role as an educator. Each question posed, each skeptical glance met with a thoughtful response, moved Rachel beyond mere survival in her professional environment. She sensed a shift occurring, both inside of her and in the collective consciousness of her colleagues. As she walked down the empty hallway, the echoes of her presentation still resonated. What would become of this awakening? Would she keep the flame alive, or let it dwindle under the weight of doubt? The challenge loomed large. She would have to navigate the complexities of history and identity and face those who clung tightly to traditional narratives, both in the classroom and within herself. Determined to harness her recent momentum, Rachel spent the following days preparing. She dove into research with renewed urgency, armed with the goal of expanding her understanding of Genghis Khan not just as a conqueror, but as a complex figure whose legacy was multifaceted. She read historical analyses, contemporary critiques, and narratives from voices traditionally marginalized in the accounts of his reign. Every piece of information became a stepping stone towards a broader comprehension of not just Khan himself, but of what that meant for identity in the context of history. However, the deeper she delved, the more questions arose. How would she present these ideas to her colleagues, whose foundational beliefs were entrenched in traditional views? Was she equipped to handle the potential backlash? The tight knots of anxiety in her stomach made it clear she was wrestling with more than just professional concerns. This felt deeply personal. The fear of her own inadequacies bubbled up, snaking around her resolve. At a faculty meeting later that week, Rachel found herself leaning against the wall, observing the dynamics between her colleagues. The usual comfort of familiarity was tinged with sharp edges. Debates flared, voices rose, and laughter felt forced. When her chance came to speak, she felt the weight of her newfound knowledge pressing on her chest. Would she harness the courage to challenge the fabric of entrenched beliefs? Could she defend her insights passionately without alienating those whose support she still craved? Instead of launching directly into her ideas, Rachel took a moment, allowing her curiosity to guide her. What does everyone think about the way we present historical figures? Are we doing justice to their complexities? She asked, her voice softer than she intended but steadied at eye, and that instant, she felt a shift. Some colleagues showed genuine interest, nodding thoughtfully, while others furrowed their brows, skepticism evident. Yet, it illuminated something for Rachel. There was a hunger for more meaningful discussions that hadn't been acknowledged in years. Perhaps the climate was ripe for change, perhaps she could help cultivate and evolve it. After the meeting, as Rachel gathered her belongings, one colleague approached her. "I've been thinking about the way you framed your lesson," he said. "I never considered how narratives shape our understanding of history. What if we did a workshop on this?" The proposition ignited a spark of excitement within Rachel. Was this what she needed, a collaborative setting where ideas could flourish and evolve? However, she also recognized her dilemma. Leading a workshop meant opening herself once more to critique and challenge. With a decision looming, Rachel felt both terrified and exhilarated. She knew she had to confront not only her colleagues' doubts but her tracking fear. As she grapples with this decision, she understands that she stands on the edge of a pivotal moment, a chance to expand the conversation and redefine the scope of education in her community. Would she embrace the role of a leader in this transformative journey, or allow fear to restrain her aspirations? The moment of truth loomed, and the stakes had never been higher. Rachel spent the following days in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, her determination battling against persistent doubt. The thought of leading the proposed workshop lingered like a siren, beautiful yet treacherous. She visualized standing before her colleagues, guiding them through the complexities of history's narratives, but the fear of inadequacy tightened around her like a vice. Could she convincingly articulate these new insights, or would her voice falter under the weight of their scrutiny? Armed with an extensive collection of articles and books on Genghis Khan, Rachel set up a plan to structure the workshop. It would not merely be an exposition of facts, but a discourse intended to unravel the intricacies of historical interpretation. She envisioned fostering an atmosphere where curiosity thrived, yet the specter of potential confrontation haunted her. Her colleagues might not be ready to accept this new lens. Would they dismiss her as naive or radical, undermining her credibility? As the day of the workshop approached, Rachel's nights became restless, filled with scenarios of both success and failure. In the quiet, moonlit hours, ideas and doubts danced in her head, blurring the lines between confidence and trepidation. On one hand, she felt an electric potential to drive a shift in perspective. On the other, she feared the vulnerability of bearing her convictions like a raw nerve. This paradox stirred an impatience within her. What was holding her back from fully embracing this opportunity? Then, in a moment of inspiration, she turned to her students. She remembered how their questions had sparked her own passion for expanding historical narratives. Why not invite them to contribute to her workshop? Their youthful insights and unfiltered perspectives could serve as compelling examples of why understanding the complexities of figures like Genghis Khan mattered. Rachel initiated a dialogue with her students, framing it as an experiment in collaborative learning. "I want to hear your thoughts on history," she said, excitement mingling with nervousness. As she watched them engage, their faces lighting up with ideas, a realization washed over her. She was not merely an educator presenting information, she was a facilitator of discovery. With their input, Rachel revised her workshop plan. She arranged for her students to present their interpretations alongside her analysis, creating an interdisciplinary bridge between their tales and her scrutiny of historical narratives. This approach not only infused the workshop with energy but also shifted her role from a solitary authority to a collaborative explorer. In this setup, her fear transformed into a shared journey, where the students and colleagues alike could question and unfold narratives together. The day of the workshop arrived, tension crackling in the air. Rachel stood before her colleagues, her students beside her, all of them radiating a blend of eagerness and apprehension. The initial awkwardness fell away as they began to share and discuss. Initial skepticism gave way to curiosity. As evidence of Genghis Khan's complexity filled the room, the dialogues became richer, the conversations louder, pulsing with the possibilities of re-evaluating the past, but Rachel was acutely aware that with each question asked and idea shared, there were still naysayers lurking in the shadows of the room, eyes narrowed and arms crossed. The time was drawing near for those confrontational moments she had dreaded, the pushback against the change she was catalyzing. As the final discussion drew near, Rachel took a deep breath, knowing she had ventured into uncharted territory. Would she stand firm when challenged? Would her newfound confidence hold against the waves of resistance ahead? The stakes were higher than ever, and Rachel understood that this workshop was merely the beginning of a much larger battle, one that would undoubtedly challenge her convictions and redefine her role as an educator. Unable to shake the anticipation tugging at her thoughts, she braced herself for the pivotal moment. Her heart raced, knowing she must prepare for the most daunting question of all: what happens when the truths we uncover collide with the comfort of established beliefs? The workshop had reached its crescendo, and Rachel was keenly aware that this was a defining moment not just for her, but for her colleagues as well. As the discussion simmered, she noticed a subtle shift within the room. The stir of resistance transformed into an energetic debate. This realization, a flickering spark of empowerment, nudged her closer to the truth she was eager to uncover. She posed a question to the group, her voice steady despite the rising stakes: how does understanding Genghis Khan's strategies reshape our views on leadership today? This inquiry opened floodgates of dialogue, and intellectual curiosity turned palpable. Ideas ricocheted off walls, each colleague and student contributing pieces of their perspectives, gradually building a complex tapestry of historical interpretation. Yet, threaded throughout the conversation were the tense voices of skeptics. Rachel felt them as a weight on her shoulders. One colleague, Michael, an expert in ancient history, challenged her framing directly. But Rachel, isn't it possible that glorifying Genghis Khan romanticizes imperialism? How can we share these interpretations without succumbing to that narrative? His tone was unnervingly calm, yet it struck at the very essence of her intentions. Rachel's heart raced, and her palms felt clammy, but she knew this was a crossroads, an opportunity to lean into the discomfort rather than shrink back. That's a valid concern, Michael, she replied, striving for clarity. But what if we consider that every historical figure is a reflection of the dynamics of their time? By dissecting his methods, we can unearth insights about power dynamics that resonate today, rather than simply glorifying conquest. She sensed the air shift as colleagues leaned in, pondering her perspective. The tension slowly eased, replaced by a mutual quest for understanding. Rachel's confidence surged, fueled by her conviction that history is not just a narrative to be accepted, but a complex puzzle to be dissected. Moments later, students began contributing with passion. One student, Nina, shared her interpretation of Genghis Khan's leadership style amidst chaos. What struck me the most, she said, her voice clear, is how his adaptability to changing circumstances showcases resilience. It's not about calling for glory, but about learning from failure. The room buzzed with murmurs of agreement, and Rachel felt a warmth wash over her. Their youthful enthusiasm had ignited an atmosphere of exploration. Despite the prevailing positivity, Rachel remained acutely aware of Michael's gaze, fixed and skeptical. The weight of his scrutiny reminded her of the dangers of misinterpretation and the responsibility she bore in presenting these narratives accurately. There was still a battle to be fought, one that extended beyond the workshop, into the very heart of academic discourse. As the workshop drew to a close, Rachel felt the solid ground beneath her shift once more. The questions that had once tangled her thoughts were now clear. She had changed. She was no longer merely a hesitant educator but a provocateur of thought, nudging her peers to re-evaluate established beliefs. Leaving the meeting room, adrenaline coursed through her veins. She had faced confrontation and emerged transformed. But her intuition warned her that this was merely the prelude to deeper struggles. Tomorrow she would address Michael one-on-one. His reaction had not only challenged her approach but hinted at larger institutional obstacles ahead. Rachel couldn't shake the sensation that the impending discussion might push boundaries even further. What would happen when the deeper layers of ideological resistance began to emerge, especially from those who had once been supporters? Bracing herself for unforeseen confrontations ahead, she steeled her resolve. The true test of her educator's journey awaited just around the corner. Rachel arrived early the next day, her heart thudding in her chest as she prepared for her conversation with Michael. The corridor felt cavernous, echoing the remnants of her workshop's energy. She replayed her arguments in her mind, focusing on how to articulate her vision, the significance of continual questioning, and the profound implications history wields on current leadership models. When Michael stepped into her office, his demeanor was neutral but his eyes bore the weight of skepticism. "So, Rachel, ready to tackle the implications of yesterday's discussion?" His words dripped with a mix of challenge and curiosity. "Absolutely," she replied, pulling her thoughts together. "I think there's a lot we can gain from these discussions. Genghis Khan's adaptability, for instance, isn't just about context, it's about resilience in the face of adversity. That resonates in today's fast-paced world." Michael leaned back in his chair, fingers tented under his chin. "And do you believe that resilience justifies the means? The ends?" He paused, gauging her reaction. It sounds like a slippery slope. The challenge of his inquiries rattled her, but Rachel breathed through it. Understanding the full scope is vital. We can't afford to sanitize history. Discussing figures like Khan should lead us to question our definitions of leadership, not to excuse any brutalities but to discern the intricacies of power. The tension in the room thickened, and Rachel felt every second weighing heavily. She had been anticipating this confrontation, but now, standing on the precipice of deeper ideological debate, her resolve wavered. She needed to be articulate. This was not just a dialogue about Genghis Khan, but about the future of their entire field of study. "Let me be blunt," Michael interrupted her thoughts, his voice grave. "When does the pursuit of critical engagement turn into moral ambiguity? You risk undermining our institution's ethos by presenting such a contentious figure without sufficient critique." Rachel leaned forward, her pulse quickening. "But isn't that precisely when education becomes stagnant? What's worse, sugarcoating historical figures or critically engaging with their flaws? I want students to ask hard questions, to confront uncomfortable truths." Each sentence felt weighty, as if she were laying down the gauntlet before him. For a moment, Michael remained silent, considering her challenge. Rachel noted the flicker of uncertainty cross his face. This was the opening she needed. The impasse lay in both their interpretations of academic integrity versus historical integrity, a debate that raged within her as well. As the discussion progressed, Michael introduced unexpected criticisms. "You talk of resilience, but don't confuse it with a disregard for ethics. How will you address the potential backlash from our upper administration? They aren't known for their tolerance of unconventional viewpoints." His voice was steady, but his gaze was sharper now, as if probing for weaknesses. She braced herself, recalling the moment she stood before her peers in the workshop. "Change doesn't come without risk, Michael. If we're never willing to engage with the complexities, we'll only be perpetuating the same limits imposed upon us. We owe it to our students and to ourselves to be brave thinkers, to break the mold of what we were taught history is supposed to be." Rachel saw the flicker of intrigue in his eyes, a crack in the armor of his skepticism. Perhaps she was reaching him, or perhaps he was merely weighing her words against his own convictions. The uncertainty grounded her, the notion that perhaps each of them was, in a way, unraveling themselves before each other. They shared a moment of silence, both contemplating the weight of their discourse. Rachel felt the shift distinctly. She was no longer just defending an idea, she was challenging him to reconsider his own foundations, but with the thrill of potential connection came a swell of doubt. Would her words truly resonate, or would they draw hostility from colleagues who viewed her as a disruptor? Despite her confidence, she was acutely aware of the pushback she might face. In that charged silence, Rachel realized this would not be the last confrontation with disciplinary tradition. She took a breath, poised to invite dialogue rather than demand agreement. "Michael, we both understand the stakes. How do we move forward while tackling these nuances head-on without sacrificing our academic integrity?" His response was as critical as the atmosphere around them: "If we are to navigate this course, then we must tread carefully. Agreeing to disagree shouldn't be our endgame. Let us explore how we can frame these discussions constructively." As they formulated a tentative plan for how to approach their colleagues, Rachel felt a new sense of determination rising within her. But with Michael's words echoed in her mind, the ominous specter of institutional pushback loomed larger. The upcoming departmental meeting was set to shake the very foundations of their academic environment. Rachel steeled herself. The real test was yet to come, as she prepared to face not just one skeptic, but an entire room of them. Would they embrace the complexities she advocated, or would her initiatives be met with resistance? Sensing the weight of the next chapter in her journey, Rachel knew she must propel forward no matter the cost. Rachel arrived early for the departmental meeting, the air heavy with anticipation. The conference room buzzed with scattered conversations, but her mind was centered on the task at hand. Would she have the courage to introduce her ideas, or would the familiar tendrils of self-doubt wrap around her again? Michael had shown unexpected support in their previous conversation, but the specter of imminent dissent loomed larger than ever. This was a room filled with seasoned academics, each with their own entrenched beliefs about historical narratives. Her stomach twisted as she took her seat at the long table, knowing that she would soon have to navigate a minefield of opinions. As the meeting began, Rachel could see the unease etched on some faces when the topic moved toward curriculum changes. The chair, Dr. Johnson, welcomed the chance to vote on new approaches to teaching history. Let us start by discussing the potential for a unit on unconventional leaders, specifically Genghis Khan, he proposed. A few eyebrows rose in response. Rachel felt her pulse quicken. This was her moment. Taking a deep breath, she lifted her hand, a gesture brimming with both trepidation and resolve. "I believe engaging with controversial historical figures like Khan can provide critical insights into the complexities of leadership." Dr. Johnson nodded, inviting her to elaborate. "Please, Rachel, continue. Resilience is shaped by the capacity to adapt, and we must recognize that true leadership can manifest in varied and often uncomfortable ways. While Khan's tactics were brutal, they also demonstrate strategic brilliance in an ever-evolving landscape, a concept relevant in today's global dynamics." She strove to remain composed, her voice steady despite the swirling anxiety within her. The first question came swiftly from Professor Marshall, his brow furrowed in skepticism. "But Rachel, doesn't that run the risk of glorifying tyranny? We have a responsibility to instill ethical discernment in our students." Rachel felt the room's attention shift to her, and she fought to suppress the surge of defensiveness. "I'm not advocating for glorification, I'm urging that we confront the uncomfortable truths in history. We should explore why advocates of leadership often distort figures that do not fit into a neat, palatable mold of righteousness." She sensed a wave of interest ripple through the room, but Professor Marshall wasn't finished. "And what about the potential backlash? We've seen institutions face serious repercussions for controversial curriculum. How will you address the higher-ups who might oppose this initiative?" The implications of his question struck hard. This was not just about academic courage but also institutional survival. Yet, Rachel felt a flicker of determination ignite within her. "If we shy away from difficult discussions, we risk stagnation. It's essential that we not only challenge preconceived ideas but also prepare our students to deal with the ethical complexities they will face in their own leadership journeys." Michael interjected, framing her point as a collaborative pursuit. "I think Rachel is right. It's not about diminishing our values, it's about elevating our discourse. Allowing for diverse perspectives can lead to deeper educational outcomes." The conversation shifted gears, and for a moment, Rachel felt emboldened. Ideas bounced back and forth, igniting a fervor in the room. Her words had stirred something, perhaps a shared vision for a more critical pedagogy. But with this enthusiasm, fatigue tugged at her. Were they genuinely debating or merely playing a more civilized version of the conflict she had anticipated? As the session progressed, the discussion became a balancing act of ideas and defenses. Rachel noticed the subtle glances exchanged amongst her colleagues. Discontent simmered just beneath the surface. While there were voices in favor, she could also sense the undercurrents of opposition coalescing. By the end, Dr. Johnson suggested a vote on including a unit on Genghis Khan as a trial run. Rachel's heart raced with uncertainty, knowing fully well the reaction from the upper administration would be swift and potentially severe. After the meeting concluded, as her colleagues began to disperse, Rachel felt a jolt of realization. No matter how passionately they debated, the reality was that this was a stepping stone on a much larger journey, both for her career and the field of history itself. In that moment of clarity, the doubt within her transformed into something potent, a commitment not just to confront her own fears, but to challenge her peers to grow alongside her. But would their acceptance of her vision be genuine, or would they soon revert to self-preservation? The uncertainty left her hanging on the brink, as she prepared herself for the aftermath of their decision. Would she have the fortitude to withstand the backlash to come? Rachel felt the stakes rising. The time had come to face the true challenge. Rachel exited the conference room, her heart still pounding from the intensity of the discussion. As she walked down the corridor, the fluorescent lights flickered above, mirroring her tumultuous thoughts. She was acutely aware of the implications of her presentation. Each step felt heavier, burdened by the weight of potential backlash, but also electrified by the possibilities that lay ahead. In the weeks to come, she would be on the front line of a complex battle, not just against academic traditionalism, but against her own fears. She knew she had ignited a spark of interest in her colleagues, but how far would that spark carry? The thought of rejection loomed large, and with it, the fear of failure. Yet, beneath the anxiety was a burgeoning conviction, a belief in the necessity of her approach. Rachel made her way to her office, the thought of preparing for the trial unit pressing on her mind like a hammer forging steel. The following day, she sat at her desk staring at her computer screen, a blank document glaring back at her, waiting for the first words. She had to craft a syllabus that not only captured the essence of Genghis Khan's influence but also deflected potential criticisms. Planning the unit felt like a mission in itself. She was no longer just an academic. She was a pioneer on the frontier of transformative education. Who am I to challenge the status quo, she thought, wrestling with her inner doubts. But Michael's encouragement echoed in her mind. His belief in her potential fortified her resolve. Perhaps this was more than a professional endeavor, it was an awakening. Rachel began to fill the document with ideas, pulling from revolutionary texts that dissected leadership's ethical complexities. Each word she typed felt like a brick laid towards building her own conviction. A few days later, she received an email from Dr. Johnson. He expressed concern over the imminent vote and suggested Rachel present her syllabus to the department heads before the formal trial run. Her stomach twisted, another layer of pressure weighing down her resolve. This moment was crucial. It wasn't merely about Khan anymore but rather about establishing her voice in a domain riddled with traditionalism. Was she ready for this? As she sat preparing, she pondered the dichotomy of leadership that her colleagues held dear. Would they see her as an innovator or as a threat? She felt a creeping realization that she had to embrace both identities. Maybe I'm both, she mused, her heart racing as she framed her approach to address their concerns about glorifying tyranny. She would need to present Genghis Khan not only through the lens of military conquests but also his strategies for uniting diverse cultures, effectively emphasizing resilience and adaptability. In the days leading up to the presentation, Rachel practiced relentlessly. Standing in front of the mirror, she rehearsed her delivery, determined to convey both passion and poise. The reflection looking back at her revealed a woman on the cusp of evolution, yet fear still gripped her heart. Friendships might falter, respect might wane, and her position could be perilous if her ideas were rejected. The morning of the presentation arrived, her drive to the university punctuated by the weight of vulnerability she felt. She parked and sat in her car, taking deep breaths to center herself. With each inhale, she envisioned her success. With each exhale, she released the self-doubt that had plagued her for years. This is my moment, she told herself, pushing the door open with renewed determination. Entering the large conference room, she was greeted by the skeptical gazes of her peers, seating arrangements buzzing with tension. As she set up her laptop, Rachel felt the palpable energy swirling around her, a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Would they embrace her vision or become impediments in her journey toward growth? The time had come for her to navigate the perilous waters of intellectual bravery, and the stakes had never felt higher. Could she truly convince them to join her in exploring uncomfortable truths? Rachel straightened her shoulders and took a deep breath, ready to reveal not just her ideas, but herself. Would she find allies in this endeavor, or was she about to confront a fierce backlash that would shake her resolve? An audience of critics awaited, and Rachel stood at the threshold of a transformative moment, her potential riding on the edge of tomorrow's decision. Rachel walked into the conference room, her heart beating steadily as she prepared to present her newly crafted syllabus. This was at the culmination of her journey, marked not just by the evolution of her curriculum, but by the profound transformation within herself. As she set up her presentation, she could sense the dichotomy present in the room. Some colleagues stared at her with a mix of skepticism and curiosity, while others appeared engaged, ready to confront the impending challenge ahead. Rachel took a deep breath, channeling the confidence she had cultivated over the past several months. When she began, her voice was clear, yet it trembled with the weight of the moment. Today, I want to explore the complexities of Genghis Khan, not as a glorified conqueror, but as a strategist whose resilience and adaptability can serve as a lens through which we view our current landscape of leadership. With each slide, she detailed her syllabus, articulating how understanding Khan's approach could foster critical thinking and engagement among students. She emphasized resilience and adaptability, showing how these qualities resonated with the challenges faced by today's leaders. By challenging the historical narrative, we empower our students to navigate the uncomfortable realities of leadership. We mold thought leaders capable of grappling with complexity and ambiguity, she asserted with urgency, reinforcing her vision of an educational paradigm shift that transcended the superficial narratives. For a moment, silence stretched as her colleagues absorbed her points. Tension crackled in the air, but Rachel pressed on, determined to expose the multifaceted layers of history. Then a familiar voice broke through the quiet. "Michael. I appreciate your perspective, Rachel. However, how do we avoid romanticizing figures like Khan while also encouraging critical discourse?" Rachel felt her confidence solidify. She was ready for this. "Michael, that's a crucial question. By engaging students in controversy, we can invite them to confront moral dilemmas, fostering discernment that prepares them for future leadership roles. It's not just about historical accuracy, it's about ethical engagement in legacies that shape who we become." The conversation ignited, with colleagues shifting from retorts to collaborative discussions. The room buzzed with excitement as different perspectives intermingled, evidence of genuine engagement. Ideas flowed freely, and for the first time, Rachel felt a sense of solidarity in the room. She wasn't merely defending an idea, she had forged a path toward collective understanding. The initial skepticism began to thaw, replaced by inquiries and shared reflections on ethics and leadership. After what felt like an eternity, Dr. Johnson cleared his throat, signaling the conversation's critical moment. "Rachel's syllabus will be put to a vote, but I want to emphasize the importance of confronting discomfort in our classrooms. Are we willing to challenge traditional narratives for the sake of deepening our students' understanding?" The vote was swift, with overwhelming support for Rachel's proposal. Elation surged through her. This milestone signified more than institutional validation, it represented a shift in the way her colleagues viewed complex histories. Yet amidst her joy, Rachel realized she stood not at the end, but at the beginning of a new journey. The discussions that began in that room were seeds planted for future dialogues, expanding far beyond her very first presentation. As colleagues approached her afterward, eager to brainstorm and collaborate on developing their own approaches to difficult subjects, Rachel felt their respect envelop her like a warm embrace. She had achieved recognition not only for her work but for her evolution as an educator willing to embrace discomfort for greater understanding. Walking away from the meeting, Rachel reflected on her growth. She had navigated the choppy waters of skepticism, transformed her insecurities into strengths, and emerged as a catalyst for change within her academic environment. Looking back, She could see the stark contrast between who she had been, a hesitant educator bound by tradition, and who she was now, a confident innovator ready to explore the complexities of leadership through the depths of history. With newfound purpose, Rachel knew she was on her way toward establishing a space where inquiry, resilience, and meaningful discourse flourished in every corner of her classroom. This was her moment, and she knew there would be more challenges to face. But with the foundation she had built through vulnerability, inquiry, and collaboration, she felt solid confidence in her ability to navigate them all. Now, Rachel looked ahead with excitement for the future, ready to expand the dialogue and redefine education. And for those reading this tale of transformation, take action now. Subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can inspire your journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us share these incredible narratives with others. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Rachel's remarkable evolution. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and understand the real power of personal growth. You need to support this channel. Don't wait even one more second to do your part.